Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today it is time to look back at the 2024 United Football League season and look back at what the 5 most disappointing things from the season were. Now, this is not going to be limited to just a player, just teams, just certain things. This is the overall season. Whether it be certain attendance, whether it be certain teams not playing good or certain players, anything's on the table. And so, this is one that a lot of people might disagree with or agree with, and might disagree with certain rankings on where I put them. So without further ado, let's get started with number 5, the Battlehawks offense. Now, yes, I know St. Louis fans might think I should put this higher, maybe even top 3. I'm keeping this one at 5. Look, was it a disappointing unit? Yes. The fact is the amount of talent this team had to do basically nothing is incredible. Yes, they finished as the second highest scoring team in total points. The issue is in yardage stats, mainly passing, they were pretty poor, and that's where they were supposed to be elite at. Look, the fact is this team had guys like Marcel Aitman, Hakeem Butler, Darius Shepard, Ja'Cour Pearson. Yes, I know certain guys dealt with injuries during points of the season, but you pretty much always had at least 2 of them fully healthy. A.J. McCarron was supposed to be, at least Battlehawks fans said, the best QB in the league, or at worst top 3. For a lot of the year, his stats made him look like a mediocre QB. Now, not all of that was his fault. A lot of that was the horrid offensive play calling by Bruce Gradkowski. He was the worst OC in the league. Look, I know you can make our cases for other guys. The fact is, overall, the amount of awful screen passes or just failure to utilize your best weapons was terrible. Look, I talked about it before in the fan video of the fan awards. Hakeem Butler did basically nothing the last 2 weeks of the regular season, yet still had the receiving crown. The fact that Gradkowski just decided to not really throw his way is incredible. And the XFL Conference Championship game just amplifies this even more. Despite knowing what defense you were playing because you played them the week before, you went out there and had one guy play good. Jacob Sailors was pretty much it. Hakeem Butler had a couple really big catches and a couple drops. He played solid. But A.J. McCarron's final stat line of 19 to 29 for 179 yards, that's not good enough. Again, A.J. McCarron threw for basically less than 10 yards a completion, not attempt, completion, pretty much the entire year. Jacob Sailors, Mateo Durant, before he got hurt, are pretty much the 2 most dependable guys on offense. Everybody else was streaky, and a lot of that was the play calling. In the end, your offense finished as one that was pretty mediocre. Points scored, great. Yardage, not so great. The team's defense was the unit that made them good. They were also the worst team in third down percentage. The fact is the Battlehawks lived and died pretty much on their defense. Their defense had to do a carry job many weeks during the season. Yes, there was that 3-week stretch during the middle of the season before the Birmingham game where the offense looked great. But the fact that it took so long to get to that point, and then as soon as AJ went down, the offense just flatlined, and even then, it's not even like that was a good enough excuse. Remember, you still had elite, not good, but elite talent at the receiving position that you couldn't utilize. The Battlehawks offense are saved from being higher on this list because of the fact they still finished as one of the best teams in scoring. Yes, they gave the ball away a decent amount, but it wasn't the worst in the league, and their rushing game was still really solid. But they definitely were a pretty big disappointment, just not top 4 disappointment. Now, what was going to be the Roughnecks defensive line. Look, I've said it before, I get it. They dealt with injuries, retirement, yada, yada, yada. Blah, 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 whatever. But as I've also said before, the insane depth this D-line had heading into the season was unbelievable. You had really 2 or even 3 defensive lines worth of great players. Now, yes, all these guys were on the season in the 2024 season. Yes, some of these guys only played a couple games, didn't do a lot, whatever, for different reasons. And yes, one or 2 of these numbers might be incorrect, but this was pretty much everything I found. The left number is the games played in 2023. The right number is games played in 2024 for the middle numbers, and then the right side of the numbers is sacks from 2023 to 2024. Chris Odom didn't play in 2023, nor did Carlo Kemp. Carlo Kemp went on to do basically nothing in the limited time he played in 2024. Chris Odom was still really solid. He had 5.5 sacks. And Ethan Westbrooks was also really, really solid. He went from having 2 sacks in 2023 to having 3.5. Once you get past them, everybody else was a massive disappointment. Glenn Logan had 0 sacks. Keontae Schad went from being the second in the league in sacks in the USFL in 2023 to having 0 in 2024. Sagapalu, before he got hurt, also had no sacks, despite having them the year prior. Reuben Foster had the same, but Rodriguez, he dipped a ton. Bingham, he dipped a lot. Johnson, he dipped a lot. Overall, the team had their overall player base play 11 more games of spring football in 2024, yet finish with 16 fewer sacks. I get it, sacks aren't everything, there's TFLs and all that. But the Roughnecks finished with 14 total sacks on the season, the worst in the league, despite their D-line heading into the season, talent-wise, being the best in the league to an even larger extent than the Battlehawks receiving corps being the best in the league. This D-line should have been incredible, and instead it was, Yeah, I know some of those guys I mentioned were linebackers, outside linebackers, similar. The point is, they were not able to get the pressure they were supposed to. Again, even with injuries. Just look at those guys on there. If your starting lineup were, let's say, Shad, Sagapalu, Logan, and Johnson, you're fine with that. I mean, you're okay with that. If your starting lineup is, if your big four defensive linemen, however you want, is, Kemp, Foster, Rodriguez, Bingham, you're fine with that. You're fine with any of those four guys being your starting D-line, in theory, heading into the season, and instead this D-line did virtually nothing all year. I get it, there's other issues with Roughnecks, but the D-line was a massive flop this year. Now, number 3 is going to be the coaching in the league. Mainly the 4 guys that missed the playoffs, but even then you could argue that other guys could fit in there as well. Just as quick mentions, of course, you have, A.J. Smith sometimes just kind of not really knowing how to call plays well at certain points in the season. Issues with, Anthony Becht in the playoff game not wanting to go for the win and instead just kind of giving up. But really, it's these 4 guys. Now, Stoops to the least extent. Look, coaching has a lot to do with when you lose close games or games you lose, but he was definitely the best of these 4. Reggie Barlow, the amount of terrible timeouts and terrible challenges he did was remarkable. The decision to stick with Te'amu throughout the entire season made no sense. Okay, once you're at week 8 and you already know you're not going to make the playoffs, see what you have in your other QBs instead of just trotting out Te'amu for no reason. Now, if Te'amu told you he's going to retire after this year, then I can get it. But the decision to keep him out there throughout the entire year when you have guys you need to, get film on and see how good they are makes no sense. John DeFilippo, where was the O-line help? I get it's not only on him, but the fact that him and the GM did not get any real help for the O-line is inexcusable. The constant flip-flopping of QBs didn't help either. Curtis Johnson, best offense in the league. That's all I have to say. These coaches were pretty poor. Look, Skip Holtz had, question marks about his QB decisions early on, but really, him and Nolan pretty much avoided any sort of real issues throughout the year. Wade had, the little bit with the whole Hogan debacle, that Houston game where do you stick with Hogan or Dormade? Becht really didn't have anything until the playoff game. So those 4 coaches were definitely the best. The fact is these 4 guys with mainly Barlow and Johnson were just not great, and DeFilippo as well. The fact is I think everybody agrees that CJ needs to go, that they need a new head coach. And I would even argue that you could keep the other 3, but Barlow was really bad this last season. I think that there's other guys. Jaron Horton definitely deserves a shot among other coaches, so we'll see. And Stoops might be back, might not because of money and time and all that. Overall, though, if you lose these 4 coaches and keep the other 4, you're fine with that. I mean, no offense to Stoops, he's a legend. But coaching was definitely pretty poor this year, especially considering how good the USFL looked in 2023. When you saw, the new coaches come in and all be really well. DeFilippo looked great last year in the USFL. Mike Nolan was able to make the Panthers better. Ray Horton made the Maulers better. And then you just had... And then even Curtis Johnson made the Gamblers look better. But, yeah, not this year. Now, number 2 is going to be the parity of the league. Look, from week 4 to the playoff power rankings, I had the same 4 teams in the top 4. Just think about that for a second. That's the week 4 rankings. Week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 playoff. That's 8 straight power rankings with these same 4 teams in there. And I could have made it 9 if I decided to put the Battlehawks with the Renegades, but I've already made that case. You can go check that out. Yes, I get it. A lot of people moved the Brahmas outside the top 4 for DC that 1 week when they lost. I didn't. I said it was 1 week. You can't judge it by that. I made a bunch of reasons, and it ended up being true. The point is, You had 8 straight weeks where you had the same 4 teams in the top and the same 4 in the bottom. And that's not the only thing that you look at. When you look at each of these power rankings, once you get past week 4, guess where the Showboats are? They're bottom 2 every single week. Guess where the Roughnecks are? They're bottom 2 every week except week 6. Well, and week 5, but I mean, you look at it. You pretty much had the same teams in the same areas. For almost the entire stretch, not every week, but almost all of it, 5 and 6 were DC and Arlington, and 7 and 8 were Memphis and Houston. So your lack of parity was just that terrible. The Stallions were number 1 the entire year. It's just, look, the 2023 USFL season proved that 8 teams can be a very competitive, fun league, but this year was a terrible look in terms of parity in an 8-team league, because again, you had the same 4 teams for 8 straight weeks being in the top 4, and the same 4 naturally being in the bottom 4. You do not want to see that, ever. That is terrible, but it is what it is. The biggest disappointment of the season is the Memphis Showboats franchise. I mean, I think you all knew this was coming. I'm sorry to you Showboats fans, but I have to do it to you again. Sub 7,000 average fans per game, first of all. You had the lowest we've seen in announced attendance for ultramodern spring football history dating back to the 2023 XFL, and I'm pretty sure even the 2019 AF, I think. Can't confirm that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think so. 5,600 in week 6. Horde. Your actual play on the field this year, Horde. You won 2 games against Houston, so you quote-unquote had a team's number. Granted, your week 1 win was a very lucky win, but you still got the W. And your performance was terrible. Worst turnover differential by yourself. Worst in points allowed, worst in yards per game allowed, worst in yards per game 4. The only thing that you were technically not the worst in was really points scored, but even then you were still pretty poor. Again, we already mentioned your coaching being a disappointment. What was good about this team? You had like Papele and Davis being good, and that was pretty much it. Darius Victor, congrats to him for winning Sportsman of the Year. In terms of on the field, this team basically was a failure on all fronts. Again, you had really 3 guys that you can actually look at in a truly positive light. Yes, Jay Adams and Sage Surratt were both still really solid, but they weren't incredible. A lot of that was because of the QB and O-line play. The point is this team was supposed to be a really fun team to watch, and instead they were a joke. Definitely deserves this number 1 spot. The biggest disappointment of the 2024 UFL season is the Memphis Showboats' entirety. So let me know down below if you agree or disagree with this list. As always, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as I upload any videos. I am doing a 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Currently, I've got like a decent amount of things for, including the 2024 UFL Championship Rally Towel. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while and want to support me, think about becoming a channel member for 99 cents a month at least. You will get an exclusive video every month as well as many other stuff. And as always, guys, have a great night.